It is a place of legend, shrouded in extraordinary mystery. A land of gleaming cities, overflowing with gold and silver. A brilliant civilization that charted the heavens and sailed the vast seas. But all it was, and all it ever knew, was wiped off the face of the earth by one terrible cataclysm. Now only its name survives to echo through the ages. Atlantis, the lost continent. The legend of Atlantis has inspired the imagination of artists and explorers throughout the ages, blurring the line between fantasy and reality. Indeed, the desire to find the true location of Atlantis and reclaim its ancient wisdom has launched countless quests. But now, the hunt is heating up. Archaeologists, armed with new technology and leads uncovered in recent excavations, think the time may finally have come. Across the world, a new generation of explorers are turning their focus to what could be the ultimate discovery. But like all great quests, this one is hotly contested. And as three teams fan out simultaneously across the world, we join them to see if they can unearth the reward that has eluded so many. Atlantis. Ivar Zapp is a man obsessed. A professor of engineering who's devoted his entire life to finding Atlantis, he's convinced the lost civilization will be found here in the dense rainforests of Costa Rica. His theories are based on archaeological discoveries of ancient artifacts that suggest these jungles were once home to a highly sophisticated civilization. Now he's hoping that high-tech sensing equipment will lead him to the truth. Underwater explorers Greg and Laura Little believe they have the answer, and Atlantis is beneath the waters of the Caribbean. They have come to explore and chart a strange man-made structure, which they believe can prove they have found the remains of the long-lost kingdom. Convinced the other teams are wrong, maverick archaeologist Simon Cox is joining forces with ancient Greek expert Tom Martin to prove they have found the answer to the 3,000-year-old mystery. Cox is an adventurer who spent his life exploring the mysteries of the pyramids. Tom Martin has spent his career studying, researching, and trying to understand the ancient world which we've come to seek. Their search begins at the wellspring of the mystery of Atlantis, Athens, Greece. It was here the immortal story of Atlantis was told 3 millennia ago.
This is the site of the fabled Academy of Plato.
Well, I'm really glad you picked this spot. Plato walked here, taught here, imagined here. Plato is the key to unraveling the mystery of Atlantis, and backed up by your knowledge of Egypt, I think we might really get somewhere in unlocking this mystery, but Plato's the key for me.
The only written account of Atlantis comes from Plato. The ancient Greek philosopher was perhaps the greatest truth seeker and sage in recorded history. According to Plato, the story of Atlantis came to him through his uncle Solon, who in turn heard the account from an Egyptian priest. Woven into Plato's account of the lost world are clues about where it might have been. But like any great mystery, and one that lasts 3,000 years must qualify as one of the greatest, the clues are fantastic and puzzling. Few can agree on what they mean or where they point. Plato places Atlantis far away from Greece, in an ocean beyond what he called the Pillars of Hercules. Today we know them as the Straits of Gibraltar. Beyond that, Plato offers little to narrow the search. But legend tells us Atlantis was enormous, larger than Libya and Asia combined. Located in a bountiful region that had 2 separate growing seasons a year. Other clues suggest Atlantis was also an advanced civilization that had mastered technology of which other cultures of the time could only dream. Ivar Zapp believes all these clues point to one place, Costa Rica. Bounded by oceans on both sides, Costa Rica fits Plato's clues that Atlantis was surrounded by ocean. Ivar believes the Aztec and Mayan ruins show an advanced culture whose knowledge has been lost. Could the Americas be home to an ancient civilization in which Mayan and Aztec ruins are the last remnants? Deciphering the meaning of ancient American artifacts has fascinated Ivar Zap for 20 years. He has devoted his life to investigating archaeological sites throughout Costa Rica. His passion is proving that ancient American history, known as pre-Columbian, was far more advanced than conventional archaeology admits. These relics hold the remnants of a forgotten period of achievement.
These pieces show a very advanced civilization, not a primitive culture.
Like a zealous prophet, Zap's mission is to convert others interested in solving the mystery of Atlantis. He wants to wake up the world to his findings. On this day, Ivar is taking a freelance journalist to view the most mysterious discoveries in the modern search for Atlantis. A discovery of megaliths so startling, he feels it may change our understanding of history forever. This pilgrimage is just one of many Ivar has made over the past 20 years to study and write about the bizarre megaliths that have inspired his life's work. Megaliths, which Ivar believes, point to an advanced civilization far older than the Egyptians. It's an epic journey. Ivar and the journalist fly over volcanic mountain ranges, far into the jungles of the hot and humid Dikis River Delta, home of the mysterious megaliths.
These were never shown to the conquistadors, okay? They were here for hundreds of years. And suddenly, in 1936, the jungle was cut down for the United Fruit Company's banana plantation. They suddenly showed up in the middle of the plantation. Okay, Baron, here we are. Wow. And they are the newest archaeological object of Atlantis that is buried under the ground.
For millennia, the jungle hid this powerful secret from the eyes of man. A secret Ivar believes is the key to discovering the lost culture of Atlantis.
Here's the beauty.
Wow, this is incredible. Finally.
Touch them.
Really nice.
We've known about the pyramids, we've known about the Stonehenge for a long time, but these spheres still pose a mystery. I think I've solved part of the mystery.
Traditional archaeology has no explanation for these solid stone globes.
Now you're going to see one buried exactly what it's been for hundreds, if not thousands of years. It's a huge one. We can barely see a quarter of the sphere.
It's nothing like I imagined it to be.
Archaeologists that have investigated this area have documented the existence of 500 of these spheres. And we don't know how many are buried, okay? Because there's a lot of them still buried.
I was noticing the location of this and then the location of this. Now, what's the relationship?
If you're standing behind this sphere, looking towards that sphere, in a certain date of the year, a star in the sky at night will line up. And the astronomer navigator would say, this is the day to travel with that star to get to a given destiny.
Legend says Atlanteans were extraordinary mariners, so such an ingenious system of navigational astronomy would be essential for sailing to far-flung destinations. Ivar believes these perfectly hewn spheres are proof that eons ago, Costa Rica was a vital part of Greater Atlantis.
Basically, these balls were used over a long period of time to teach young people the whole heavenly knowledge. Also, Atlantis were aware that the moon and the sun were round, and I think they came to the conclusion that the earth was a round sphere too.
Many of these orbs have been removed from the jungle, while others remain buried, their secret knowledge waiting to be discovered. But in the deliberate arrangement of the spheres that remain, Ivar claims he has found intriguing evidence of a connection between Atlantis and other mysterious locations around the globe.
fact that this one is pointing to the Pyramid of Giza tells me that these people knew of the existence of the pyramid and they had been there, and therefore they had to have crossed the ocean. They were world navigators, global navigators.
In the years since the orbs were found, Ivar has made other intriguing connections.
I asked myself also, who else did these spheres? And suddenly it turns out that the ancient astronomers of Greece and Egypt built the same size spheres, about 6 feet in diameter, and they hark back to the Greek god of Atlas holding a sphere on his back. So things began to look more and more like Atlantis could have been in America.
But to make his case even stronger, Ivar has more exploring to do in the jungles of Costa Rica. And his next destination could hold even more compelling evidence about the true location of Atlantis. Up next, an underwater adventure leads to an extraordinary discovery. Then, a trip to the island of Thera uncovers answers to ancient questions. The legend of Atlantis tells us how, in a single day, the proud civilization was destroyed by earthquakes and floods, and all the men and women and all they had built and accomplished were lost beneath the sea. That's why Greg and Laura Little believe searching for signs of Atlantis on land is a waste of time. Like Ivar Zapp, they've heeded Plato's clues to look into the west, far beyond the so-called Pillars of Hercules, the Straits of Gibraltar. But unlike Ivar, the Littles are focusing their search beneath the waters of the Caribbean Sea.
Marine archaeology is a portion of our search because a lot of the ancient civilizations will be found underwater. If there were civilizations back around 10,000 BC, they're now submerged, all of those that were on the coastlines, because the water level has risen since the last ice age.
Underwater archaeology itself is not real new. We've had the technology for a while, but almost everybody has applied this technology to finding treasure, gold, something like that. But finding submerged cities or a structure, that is very new.
Modern science has shown that water levels worldwide were much lower 9,000 years ago. The Littles believe the islands that now dot the shallow waters of the Caribbean connect into one landmass large enough to be the fabled kingdom of Atlantis.
No one yet has really looked around in the Bahamas for underwater sites, and the truth is the only people who have performed something that's close to underwater archaeology in the Bahamas are people that have searched for Atlantis.
Greg and Laura were first drawn to the Caribbean when they found reference to the island of Bimini through the work of famed 1930s psychic Edward Casey. He predicted that Atlantis would one day rise from the water near the island.
In 1969, the Bimini Road was found. And the Bimini Road is probably the structure that's been most linked to Atlantis.
As the Littles fly over the Bimini Road, they can make out the J-shaped formation made of stones, laid out in a pattern they claim is too regular to be a natural formation. But on their latest diving trip to see the Bimini Road, they come across dramatic new information. A fellow diver 100 miles away on Andros Island has reported finding an even bigger formation.
There's a platform, an underwater platform, that he believes looks very similar to the Bimini Road.
But time is of the essence. A hurricane is fast approaching Andros Island, and if they wait too long, shifting sands could forever bury the new discovery.
We hope that it will remain available to us as long as possible.
Greg and Laura must charter a private plane to transport them the 100 miles across the Caribbean to get there as fast as possible.
It's 100 yards out there, some sort of a stone structure. It's bigger than the Bimini Road. It's there. We'll find it. You can videotape it, and I'll go out and look. Okay.
They believe they may be on the verge of an important new discovery. Evidence of a huge man-made structure off the island of Andros will support their theories about the location and true existence of Atlantis. In this first attempt to locate the stone structure, Greg will swim with a snorkel to where the stones have been sighted. To find the strange new structure, Greg must study the floor of the sea and distinguish between the natural stone formations and coral growths before he can recognize the stones that could have been put in place by man. As he swims, Greg finally begins to see something that could be huge slabs of stone placed side by side. Is this what he has come so far to find? The scale of what he sees certainly exceeds his expectations.
Well, it looks something like the Bimini Road, but it's a lot bigger. It's at least 100, 150 feet wide. I don't know how long it is. I didn't reach the other end, but certainly it's 300, 400 yards long, and it's got gigantic stones, 20, 30 feet, rectangular stones. We'll definitely have to come back and look at it, have to measure it. It's going to take a lot of time and energy.
If their find is indeed part of Atlantis, it begs the question, how did the continent end up under the sea? The Littles think rising waters after the Ice Age simply submerged the mythical continent. But according to Plato, something much more cataclysmic destroyed Atlantis, which is why Simon Cox and Tom Martin have come to this island in the Aegean Sea, which was the site of the largest volcanic eruption in history.
You can see the different layers of the material that came out of the volcano.
This is the island of Santorini, known in Plato's time as Thera. The smaller islands that dot this bay are remnants of the biggest volcanic eruption in history, an eruption so massive it caused floods and earthquakes and darkened the skies around the world.
Some of the holes are probably where the large boulders were, that in the final stages of the eruption, it shot out like giant cannonballs.
The massive eruptions destroyed most of Thera in about 1470 BC, and even 1,000 years later in Plato's time, the eruption was legendary. Could the fate of this island be connected to the demise of Atlantis?
Thera is one of the Greek islands, and it would have been on the route for ships going from Athens to Egypt and the Near East. Plato was going to go to Egypt. He would have been island hopping like everybody else, and this would have been an obvious stop.
Another vital clue is an ancient Egyptian legend far older than Plato's that talks about the Sea People, an advanced civilization from across the sea that the Egyptians both respected and feared. Could the Sea People have been the Minoans of Thera, or were they the real citizens of Plato's Atlantis? The search for more clues about Thera's ancient history brings Tom and Simon to this museum, home to artifacts from before the apocalyptic eruption.
See what they have here?
Oh my goodness, it's the papyrus fresco. That's what you'd see along the banks of the Nile.
Absolutely. This is definitely an Egyptian icon, and this is definitely something you would only see in Egypt. This doesn't grow here. So this is a very, very important piece because this does give us that connection between this place here and Egypt.
Right.
The ties between Egypt and the island's ancient culture are abundantly clear.
Simon, what does that say to you?
This is definitely just as Plato said. Here we have the concentric rings.
With the island in the center and even a canal leading out to the sea.
There isn't one other place on the planet that fits this description. Not one.
The shape of the bay mirrors Plato's description of a circular city ringed by water.
So, on our sort of imaginary checklist, really, of Atlantis and Thera, this actually marks it off really nicely.
And I think it's a really big check mark.
Yeah.
But in archaeology, the devil is in the details. Tom and Simon want to explore more of ancient Thera before they dare to claim they have found Plato's inspiration for the lost civilization of Atlantis. When we return, new technology exposes ancient secrets locked beneath the Costa Rican jungle. and our underwater detectives are hot on the trail of a lost city. Roots of the Atlantis legend as we know it come from a tale told by Greek philosopher Plato 3,000 years ago. But even in his time, the lost civilization was said to exist in a far more distant past. So while many Greek ruins still stand for modern eyes to behold, any surviving remains of Atlantis could be submerged in the sea. Or perhaps buried somewhere in the Americas. Besides the strange stone spheres he has found there, Ivar Zapp believes there is much more evidence of Atlantis to be found in the jungles of Costa Rica. To convince traditional archaeologists to study and confirm his theories, he has turned to technology. He has enlisted the expertise of Chris Fisher and Frank Kasser, specialists in using new non-invasive detection equipment. As they demonstrate their imaging equipment in a hotel lobby, Ivar hopes it will reveal compelling evidence of Atlantis beneath a local archaeological site and bring others to his way of thinking.
For a long time, I've been suspecting that below these archaeological sites, there had to be another layer of cultures, because we're talking about a long range of history, like 12,000 years. So your equipment would confirm this.
One of the main functions of this machine is that it works on an electromagnetic basis. And it measures the difference between point A and point B. And at the same time, the software has been calibrated to calculate the depth.
The 3D image on the screen was created by moving the wand fitted with an antenna back and forth along the ground, reading the Earth's own electromagnetic field. The information is translated and displayed by the special software.
It is so absolutely unique in terms of identifying voids, identifying cavities, so that when excavation has to take place, that you're not going to destroy any more of the environment. You are going to go right into this one area, surgically remove it.
To test the equipment, Frank scans the hotel's infrastructure.
I can actually create different readings. And moving right across here, I can see that there's a strong floor structure moving right across here. So a support beam in here. You see how this line is moving across?
Yeah, what is it?
Now this could be something here in the ground, a large metal brace in order to hold up the floor structure of the building. As I hold it here, it's trying now to obtain a deeper depth. But just by simply moving the equipment back and forth over the area, I can obtain different depths.
Well, Chris and Frank, I got a little taste of your equipment, and I think we're ready to fly to the moon. This looks like from the future. So anxious to see what I've been waiting for so many years.
This is exciting, you are.
Well, I can't wait till tomorrow.
Tomorrow's the day.
Having secured permission from the government, Ivar has just one day to gather evidence of Atlantis and make his case for a larger-scale study. Ivar and his team drive 100 miles deep in the mountain jungles to Guayabo National Monument, site of ruins belonging to a mysterious ancient culture.
It's the same culture of the spheres, and it's huge. They uncovered only maybe 1%.
Does this lush tropical countryside hide the remains of ancient Atlantis? For Ivar, his years of studies have brought him to this day. Will the technology he's bringing to the jungle confirm or deny his life's work? Meanwhile, Greg and Laura Little are closing in on what they believe is the biggest piece of evidence in their 10-year search for Atlantis. Following a hot lead, they are off the coast of Andros Island, anxious to take a second, closer look at a huge underwater structure they believe is evidence of the lost civilization.
Our goal this time is to try to take some measurements of each individual stone, or as many of the stones as we're able to, and get some idea of the length of the platforms.
Today we're going to go back and we're going to scuba dive it, take some video of it, and see some areas which we have not looked at before. Tide here is tremendous. And we went out to try and find the far end of this underwater platform, and it's very close to the tongue of the ocean. The tongue of the ocean is an area at Andros right off of the main reef, where it simply drops straight down over a mile. But before you get to that is where this platform is.
They must fight against the tides as they swim along the top of the pattern of stones to calculate the size of the structure. As they measure each huge stone, they swim on, trying to get a complete picture of the amazing new breakthrough.
What we believe is a hurricane uncovered it, and probably the most natural explanation of it is that it's a beach rock or some sort of an ancient beach that's maybe 6,000 to 8,000 years old. The problem is that this is so regular, and this thing gets higher as it moves out toward the ocean. And if it was a beach, you'd expect it to sort of get lower toward the ocean and come down to it. So we've been trying to find the extreme northern end of the platform. We haven't been able to find it yet. It's a lot more difficult than what it might sound.
Although exhausted and still trying to locate the end of the platform, Greg and Laura believe they have a significant find. The so-called tongue of the ocean's sheer drop suggests this may be an ancient port. Could this have been the home port for thousands of ships ready to set sail and bring knowledge of Atlantis to the four corners of the earth? Next, a dangerous hike is rewarded by a remarkable discovery. And a high-tech trip to the jungle uncovers a subterranean mystery. The fabled civilization of Atlantis is said to have been highly developed for its time, boasting advanced technology designed to coexist with the lush natural environment of the lost continent. Convinced that evidence of such a civilization exists in the jungles of Costa Rica, Ivar Zapp has led a team armed with sophisticated underground imaging equipment to Guayabo National Monument.
I think that here we have an archaeological trace of the culture of Atlantis.
These massive mounds and this section of a massive roadway cover 20 acres and are just part of what archaeologists believe could be an ancient city of over 200 acres lost to the jungle.
If I wanted to interpret the size of this city, if it's as big as archaeologists have already detected, then I could say that it could have belonged to a society like the Atlantean.
No one knows what happened to the people who lived in this city, but what they left behind tells Ivar they were like the people of Atlantis, master builders and engineers.
This fruit is called guayabo, and this place is called Guayabo. There's a lot of these fruits around in the forest, and when Plato spoke about Atlantis, he said that it was in a place that was very lush, full of fruits and hardwoods. We see it all around us, full of hardwoods, fruits, and big cities like this.
According to legend, Atlantis was huge and boasted many gleaming cities. Ivar believes Guayabo was home to the same Atlantean navigators who used the stone spheres to study the stars.
Even though Guayabo is about 100 miles from the ocean, it doesn't mean that it's disassociated from navigation, because we could think of it as a university, as a center of study over the heavens, and protected from invaders that come from sea. So this was like a hideaway, ancient astronomical observatory.
Has any of this been excavated at all?
What I understand is they haven't gone very deep. So your presence here today is extraordinarily interesting, because we might, after all, find out today what is below here.
That's what we're hoping to tell you.
Traditional archaeology says Guayabo dates back to 1000 BC, But Ivar believes that beneath the surface of this ancient city are signs of a culture far older, old enough to be Atlantis, 10,000 years old.
Today we're going to be using the electromagnetic locator. It's completely 100% non-invasive. And we're going to be doing some subsurface investigation for any type of underground burial chambers.
These high-tech sensors act as antennas, sending electromagnetic signals back to the computer. Frank will be able to see a simple image and, using his keyboard, make adjustments to get a better view. Frank's first task is to create a grid by walking back and forth in a simple pattern. It allows him to concentrate on one area.
Just by watching Frank here, I could tell he's onto something. He's triangulating in different directions, going over a possible tomb.
There's a void, big void.
The electromagnetic reading confirms there is a strange anomaly beneath the road. Working to get a clear image, Frank applies filters to define the shape of an open space below 1 meter of solid rock.
And what does it look like?
It's about 4 meters deep.
Oh, this is absolutely incredible. This is beautiful.
The 4 meter by 4 meter space is not a natural hole. The electromagnetic fields of red and blue show the Earth was dug out by man, but for what reason?
It is definitely something. What it is exactly, unfortunately, I can't tell you.
For Ivar, this void beneath the ancient road is a great leap forward for his theories. He directs the team to other spots for more tests. This one confirmation convinces him more than ever that this mountain city was once part of the civilization of Atlantis. Exploring the island Santorini has strengthened Tom Martin and Simon Cox's theory that this is the location Plato described as Atlantis. Looking for clues to check off their list, they make the trip to the highest point to find the ruins of the once great capital of this island. Hiking in the extreme heat and wind, they climb 1,300 feet above sea level to search some ancient ruins. Tom's experienced eye and his knowledge of history tell him these ruins are too new to belong to Atlantis. They belong to the age of Plato, built centuries after the huge volcanic eruption destroyed the original civilization of Thera. This was the city Plato visited on his travels to Egypt. Tom and Simon walk in his footsteps, looking for any clue that Plato used this spot for inspiration. This was a thriving capital city 3,000 years ago, full of temples, houses, and lanes, and even an advanced water system.
We had to catch the rainwater and keep it. Part of the irrigation that we've heard so much about.
Here, Plato would have heard stories of the volcano's eruption 1,000 years earlier and the island's destruction and recovery.
I think you have to imagine that as all polished and gleaming, so it really would have looked like a palace.
Walking through the ruins, Simon and Tom have not yet seen anything unexpected until they notice the view of the plain below, a plain they can now see through Plato's eyes.
Yeah, looking down at the plain, this could well have been the lush, fertile plain that Plato talks about in his dialogue.
I think so, because it's irrigated, something that Plato goes into great detail about in his Atlantis description.
Tom and Simon set off to explore the plain below, this ancient site having given them yet another intriguing link between Thera and Atlantis. Meanwhile, the race to discover Atlantis has brought Greg and Laura Little to tiny Andros Island in the Caribbean. A huge structure lurking underwater has convinced them that this is the resting place of the Lost Kingdom.
We think that it's very likely that there could be other structures actually stretching all the way from eastern Andros all the way down to Cuba.
So far, they have measured and documented the stones that make up the Andros structure, and the results excite them.
Right now, what we believe is that it's about 450 yards long, and most of them are about 25 by 30 feet. And that's large. 25 by 30 feet is large. They're double the size of the biggest stones at the Bimini Road. We're going out for our second dive, see what else we can find. Laura, you ready?
Yep.
I've got to be able to lay on this thing for several hours because it's so peculiar. There's no way to just snorkel over it and see what it is. It's so flat and so uniform, and the seams between these stones, a lot of them are right angles, perfect right angles.
The murky waters make it difficult to see the whole structure. It is only by examining how the huge flat stones are joined that a picture of the overall shape of the platform begins to form. The structure has 3 tiers, one on top of the next, like giant steps. Is it a land bridge to deeper water, part of a harbor once filled with ships? Is this the remains of an ancient seafaring culture?
Atlantis was a maritime culture, and the maritime cultures, they trade. So back even 6,000 years ago, the platform would be exposed. So it's possible that some ships could have come in, and maybe it was a place where some trading went on.
I'm impressed now. I wasn't real sure, but after seeing it firsthand, I'm impressed. It is something significant.
We still do not know for certain what it is, but whatever it is, it's pretty important.
The Littles may not know exactly what they've found, but one thing's for sure. The stone mass underwater may be the most important clue in their search for Atlantis. With their hopes buoyed by this remarkable discovery, these true believers are already making plans to return to this mysterious spot. Coming next, will Atlantis be found entombed under layers of volcanic lava? Or will the lost city be discovered in the Americas?
Wow.
When we return. Throughout the ages, few legends have sparked the mind like the story of Atlantis. Now, tools of technology are being used to reveal the truth behind the saga, as explorers seek to reveal this realm of mythology as a real destination. In the jungles of Costa Rica, Ivar Zapp believes his team has found evidence that Atlantis was located in the Americas. But to convince government archaeologists there's much to be discovered here, he must bring them as much compelling evidence as he can. As the day winds down, Ivar urges his team to keep exploring beneath the ancient ruins of Guayabo.
This is one of the biggest tombstones found on this place. For me, there's something very important underneath here. This stone weighs about probably 20 to 40 tons.
It's about 10 inches thick over here.
Yeah. Would you like to run a test
I
here?
would love to see what's underneath this.
Me too.
Permission to do official excavations hinges on what his team can find here today. What they find could be the key to Atlantis.
Ivar, take a look at this. I want you to just peek in here over my shoulder.
Are you seeing something? Oh, I see. Wow. That's the slab?
That's a slab. That's the inside of the slab.
I see it. I see it.
That's what's underneath. Do you see underneath there, the opening?
Oh, yeah, I see 2 chambers.
Big chamber, it's one. It's a single chamber, it's a big chamber, it's halfway caved in.
It's huge.
It's massive. See that?
Yeah.
For Ivar, the double chambers hidden underneath a 30-ton stone tell him this is an important site for future exploration. Twice as large as the earlier find, these underground chambers could indeed contain secrets of the lost civilization.
And perhaps, as a result, we will finally get funding to do some serious archaeological research in Costa Rica.
Could these chambers under the earth be the remains of an ancient city, one so old that it predates all known civilizations? Ivar is certain that's exactly what it is, and perhaps more importantly, that with further exploration, he'll be the one to find it. As they've explored the island of ancient Thera, Tom Martin and Simon Cox have grown more convinced than ever this was the place which inspired Plato's image of Atlantis. But before they draw any conclusions, they want to explore one last location on the far side of the island, a place that will be the most critical clue in their search, the ruins of Akwatiri. Here, the ongoing excavations are protected from the elements, preserving this once massive ancient city. In 1600 BC, Akwatiri was destroyed by Thera's great volcanic eruption. It lay under mountains of ash until it was excavated 100 years ago. Although Akwatiri is a much younger civilization than Plato's Atlantis, Tom and Simon believe its ruins offer hope that someday Atlantis too may be uncovered.
These are the walls that have stayed up to the greatest height. And these aren't even as tall as it would have been, so it gives you a sense, especially as you walk down the hill, of how massive and impressive the buildings were.
You can see here there's some more cracks in the stone, obviously from some seismic activity, from various earthquakes.
Of course, you put those above a doorway like that, you have an earthquake, you're going to get squashed flat if you're still here.
Even the more domestic findings at Akwatiri echo Plato's description of Atlantis.
Seems to be one of the group kitchen and food preparation areas, because the way Plato describes it, people didn't have their own individual kitchens. I mean, they had their houses, but they'd make food together and eat together like they were at camp all the time.
Right. Look at this.
Hey, it's a bathtub.
So do these guys have some kind of plumbing system going on?
Yeah, they did. They had a way to get water in and out of the house. Probably had to carry it in. They had, toilets and real water systems, which makes it really comfortable. We can see today from what archaeology has revealed that it really was, I think, by any standard, a sophisticated and rich civilization.
Right.
From the valuable things that we've dug up that they possessed to what you see in the excavations here at Akwatiri. Now, Plato wouldn't have been able to see that because it had been covered over by the volcano, but I think it's typical of the kind of richness and power and sophistication that was part of the civilization in this area, let's say, 2,000, 3,000 years ago.
After exploring the island's ruins and seeing glimpses of Atlantis, Simon and Tom wonder how many other ancient tales dismissed as fiction might turn out to be true.
Having seen Thera now, I'm pretty much convinced that Thera Santorini is the spot. I think that it all adds up, the clues are there, and I really think that Santorini is as close as we're going to get to finding the origin of this story.
Well, I agree with you. I think Santorini was Atlantis for Plato. Atlantis is a place of the imagination, and Plato wanted us to use our imagination to understand what's true.
So that's the whole moral point of this.
You've got to use your imagination if you're going to get at that truth that's out there beyond what we see.
For thousands of years, dreamers and poets have whispered of Atlantis, inspiring explorers to follow clues that could lead to the legendary lost continent. Clues left behind by the maritime traders of Thera, in the remains of a possible seaport beneath the Caribbean, and in puzzling stone spheres and wondrous cities of the Americas. Whether or not these places are part of the fabled kingdom, the vision it took to find them could unearth long-hidden histories and reveal the wisdom of other ancient cultures. And in time, these true believers may tell the world they have found Atlantis.